In the news tonight, Israeli soldiers shoot and kill 2 Palestinians and critically injure another in the West Bank and Gaza. Turkish police detain 41 Daesh suspects and deport 20 others after a series of operations 1 week ahead of G20 summit. And Saudi-led coalition forces send military enforcement to Yemen's Ta'an city, where fighting for control continues. Good evening and welcome to the 10 o'clock news. Israeli soldiers shot and killed a 72-year-old Palestinian woman who the army said tried to run them over near the occupied West Bank city of Hebron. Medics from the Palestinian Red Crescent who initially attended at the scene said the woman was shot 15 times. The Israeli army also shot dead a Palestinian who took part in a protest in Gaza. Soldiers fired at protesters who threw rocks near the border fence with Israel. Another Palestinian from the minority Christian community was critically hurt by Israeli army fire during a protest in the West Bank city of Bethlehem. The incident extended a 5-week-old campaign of Palestinian attacks fueled by anger at stepped-up Jewish visits to Al-Haram Sharif compound. Israeli forces have shot dead at least 70 Palestinians, including 42 whom Israeli says were carrying out or about to carry out attacks, many of whom were teenagers. The United States criticized comments made by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's new media advisor, Ran Baratas, saying they were troubling and offensive. In comments made in a private capacity, Baratas accused President Barack Obama of anti-Semitism and suggested U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry had the mental abilities of a 12-year-old. State Department spokesman John Kirby said John Kerry spoke to Netanyahu and understood the Prime Minister will be reviewing the appointment of Baratas as his communications director after the Israel leader returns from his visit to the United States. Kirby said also the U.S. was also troubled by comments Baratas made in the past supporting the building of a Jewish temple to replace the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam.
Yeah, we've seen reports of Mr. Baratas' previous comments about U.S. officials. We understand those comments were made in his private capacity. His comments about U.S. officials, including the President and Secretary Kerry, we believe were troubling and offensive. We obviously expect government officials from any country, especially our closest allies, to speak respectfully and truthfully about senior U.S. government officials. The Secretary spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, and we understand that the Prime Minister will be reviewing this appointment when he returns from his visit to the United States.
In Syria, the Damascus neighborhood of Douma was reportedly to have been shelled after an amateur video was uploaded to the internet. The footage showed severe damage to the town and rescue workers rushing to the scene of several apparent attacks, which caused multiple injuries and left at least one child buried beneath the rubble of his own home. Douma, which is 15 kilometers northeast of Damascus, has suffered intense bombardment in recent months in a wave of attacks on government-held areas. Many of Douma's residents have fled the 4-year-old conflict, moving to nearby rural areas. In Paris, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the escalating violence and extremism in the Middle East was a result of a foreign meddling in the region while attending the 38th UNESCO conference. He also urged UNESCO to send a mission to the Middle East to evaluate damage to historic sites by Daesh terrorists, namely Palmyra in Syria, where a 2,000-year-old Roman temple was blown up. The terrorists have also mined other monuments and historic buildings. Representatives of 195 member states of the organization are set to take part in UNESCO events in Paris through November 18.
We are concerned with the link of terrorism and extremism and violence in the Middle East and Northern Africa, where Daesh terrorist groups and others are massively killing civilizations. They are desecrating Islam. They are violating all religions. We see mass outflow of regional Christians, which will also undermine the balance of religions and coexistence in this area. This has been the result of undermined and destroyed state institutes in this region due to external forces' imposition of foreign values on these cultures.
The Russian foreign minister also discussed with the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in a phone conversation international efforts to launch political talks between the Syrian authorities and the opposition. Lavrov said in a statement the phone call had taken place at Washington's initiative and that the two men discussed the fight against Daesh and other militant groups in the Middle East. In the ongoing fight against terrorism, the United States and its allies targeted Daesh terrorists in Iraq with 14 airstrikes and also hit the militant group with 9 airstrikes in Syria. A U.S. military statement said 6 of the strikes in Iraq were staged near Sinjar, hitting tactical and fighting units, bunkers and an assembly area. 4 strikes near Ramadi also hit tactical units while destroying sniper positions, weapons, bunkers and a building. The attacks in Syria near Al-Hawl, Al-Hasaka and Abu Kamal struck crude oil collection points and tactical units as well as fighting positions. Turkish police detained 20 people suspected of links to Daesh terrorist group a week ahead of the G20 summit, which will be attended by world leaders on November 15 and 16. The detentions in Antalya province were part of a series of police operations against suspected Daesh members across Turkey, a major conduit of militants crossing into neighboring Syria. Anti-terror police carried out simultaneous raids in 3 districts of Antalya, finding what they described as Daesh materials. Police also detained 41 people at Istanbul's Ataturk airport on suspicion they were going to join Daesh. 20 of them were deported and 21 were still being held. Saudi-led coalition forces from the Gulf Arab nations have sent military reinforcements to Yemen's Taiz, where fierce battles have raged in recent weeks as fighting for control of the city continued. Several thousand Gulf Arab troops have amassed in central desert province of Ma'rib to provide tactical and military support to Yemeni forces as they make their way towards Sana'a, which has remained under Houthi control for more than a year. According to United Arab Emirates military officials, there are currently some 5,000 Gulf Arab troops now stationed in Yemen, about 4,000 of them from the UAE and most of them in Ma'rib. Meanwhile, Taiz residents said shelling by Houthi militias hit a residential neighborhood in the city, causing civilian casualties. U.S. President Barack Obama said it's possible a terrorist bomb brought the Russian plane down. He said the current intelligence isn't definitive enough to say exactly what caused the aircraft to crash. Meanwhile, Russia ordered a halt to flights to Egypt as concerns grew after the Russian plane incident. But the Egyptians said that it was too early to conclude the crash in the Sinai Peninsula was due to a bomb. Here's more.
Hundreds of British tourists are lining up to get out of the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. They're leaving at the advice of their government amid increasing speculation that last weekend's Russian plane crash was the result of a bomb planted by Islamic State militants. Despite delays, most are glad to be going.
But I just think if everything was in a bit more better structure, it would be easier for us Britishers to get back home quicker. But overall, I think the government made the right decision to slowly get us out of off Egypt.
Britain's public airing of its concerns about a bomb on board the plane has angered Egypt and Russia. Egypt, which depends on tourism, says there's no evidence a bomb is to blame. Many in Cairo agree.
Of course it's not a bomb. We wait and see the results of the investigations because our country will announce these results with complete transparency, and God willing, it will not have been caused by a bomb.
Britain's ambassador to Egypt, John Casson, is in Sharm el-Sheikh to help the tourists, and as they leave, investigators remain on the ground, piecing together how the plane crashed, killing all 224 people on board.
Foreign ministers and delegates from 51 Asian and European countries gathered for a second day in Luxembourg to discuss shared international and regional concerns. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini and Luxembourg's Foreign Minister Jean Asselborn hosted the 12th Asia-Europe meeting, which focused yesterday on tackling climate change, sustainable development goals, management of natural disasters and security issues. The countries attending represent 60% of the world's population, GDP and international trade, and participants included the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, the China's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Pakistan's advisor to the Prime Minister for National Security and Foreign Affairs. A design competition is hoping to feed over 1 million hungry New Yorkers in a creative way this Thanksgiving season. Titled Construction, the annual competition challenges designers, architects and engineers to build giant sculptures out of unopened cans of food. This year's 30 teams transformed 124,000 cans into gravity-defying masterpieces such as a giant butterfly, Magic 8 Ball and Bugs Bunny. The construction will be on display at New York's Winter Garden until November 16.
This is our 23rd year. It's Construction New York. Teams of architects and engineers get together and they design and build these amazing structures out of full cans of food. They're exhibited, and then after the exhibit, we deconstruct and give all the food, donate the food to City Harvest, who then gives it to 500 food pantries around the 5 boroughs.
Roger Federer was knocked out of the Paris Masters after falling to a 7-6, 3-6, 7-6 third-round defeat against big serving John Isner. The third-seeded Swiss held a serve throughout but lost the 2 tie breaks against his American opponent, who will face Spain's David Ferrer in the quarterfinals. Isner, who fired down 27 aces, ended the contest on his 4th match point with a service winner. Elena Svitolina outlasted Carla Suarez Navarro to secure the 4th and final berth in the semi-finals of the Women's Tennis Association Elite Trophy in Zhuhai, China. Suarez Navarro began the match strongly, took the set to a tie break and won it after 80 minutes. But the Spanish player then took time out for medical help and faded, losing the second set 6-1 and the third 6-3. And finally, relatively cold and partly cloudy tonight with a chance for thundery rain in the northern and central regions. Similar conditions continue in most regions across the kingdom tomorrow, with a continued chance for rain, while winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect moderate conditions tomorrow with possible rain, while winds will be northerly moderate to brisk and seas slightly choppy. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close here our top stories once again. Israeli soldiers shot and kill 2 Palestinians and critically injure another in the West Bank and Gaza. Turkish police detain 41 Daesh suspects and deport 20 others after a series of operations 1 week ahead of G20 summit. And Saudi-led coalition forces send military enforcement to Yemen's Ta'an city, where fighting for control continues. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lawal Balkar. Thank you for watching and have a good night.